Cuando en Argentina decimos en criollo, queremos decir para que lo entiendan todos. Por eso presentamos Astrología en Criollo, un podcast de Agus Astrología.
Welcome everyone again to Astrología en Criollo. This is one of these English-speaking episodes I'm starting to share here in my channel. And for this one, I have a very special guest. She is DEVON Rochelle. She's an astrologer. She is also a life coach. And right now, we wanted to talk to you about life path, life purpose, and career. This is because I had a previous episode with Rocío Sirimarco. She's a journalist, and she was wondering once how we can see using astrology if there is a life purpose or a life path, or if there is a career or a vocation that it's more suitable for us. So for this one, I'm bringing a specialist. So hi, DEVON. Welcome to Astrología en Criollo. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much. Gracias for having me. I've been so excited to talk to you. And I know you and I were just talking off air that apparently you listened to my podcast years ago before I took my long hiatus. So this is a long time coming. We have been connected on the wave streams for a long time. So I'm really excited to talk about this. This is one of my favorite topics in all of astrology. So I know we have a lot to discuss.
Yes. First of all, do you think there is a difference between life purpose and career or path in regards profession?
Yes, I absolutely do. And of course, I will want to hear your thoughts on this too.
Yes.
I know we both have Gemini in our chart, so I'll share and then I want to hear your take. But the answer is absolutely. And I think in the modern day, we often conflate the two as being the same thing. And especially in this world where everyone wants to do their purpose for their job. And I want to do something I'm really passionate about. And hey, I'm not against that. I do my purpose and I do my passion for work. And that also happens to be aligned in my chart. But I do think that there are people where sometimes they're not connected. Sometimes you have a job that maybe pays the bills. Hopefully it doesn't suck your soul or drain you in any way. But then sometimes your purpose is something else. And I think that's why it's really important to see them as two different things. And you can see in the birth chart if they are intertwined, but they aren't always. And I think trying to see purpose actually as something separate from career or your job is a really healthy thing because, you even being a mother, I'm not a mother yet, but I'm sure you might say, that's part of my purpose, but also I love my work. Helping others is part of my purpose. So I think purpose is just this huge umbrella, meaning what our soul came here to do. And then your career, sometimes that is a 9-to-5 that pays the bills. So I do think they're separate.
Yes, it's a very millennial thought that we try to convert this, do what you love in your work or do what you love in your profession and you will never have to work another day in your life. Mm-hmm. It's like we try to merge and we try to put together two pieces of a different pot. It's like, okay, so I want to work or I want to do something with my life that it's also something that I like, that I enjoy, not like working 9-to-5 in a job that pays the bills and nothing else. Mm-hmm. So from that start, suddenly we started to mix this idea that we needed to have a life purpose that matches of our work, and suddenly not that much. It's like I really don't know what my purpose is yet, but I believe it's beyond my work. It's beyond my profession. Yes. And sometimes it can change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just hearing you talk about that, saying it is outside or beyond your profession, I almost feel like your purpose is who you are and your career is what you do. And sometimes those two are really aligned, or you can bring who you are hopefully into your work. But I kind of feel like with life purpose, even outside of the technical standpoint from a birth chart, life purpose is that thing that when you are being that thing or when you are doing that thing, you feel on fire. You feel fulfilled. And that is not always something that pays the bills. Some people love being a friendly neighbor. Some people love being a friend that hosts dinner parties for their gal pals. It's not always going to pay the bills, but it doesn't mean it's any less important because it pays your soul. You know what I mean?
Yes, I totally do. And when you said this about me being a mother, it's like,
Yes.
I became a mother, but I didn't feel that it was my purpose. I felt that it was like part of a path and part of a choice. But at the same time, I feel like my purpose, it's more, I feel it like this. When I'm talking, when I'm doing the podcast, when I'm sharing, when I'm trying to give a message, when I'm trying to connect with people and share a message that someone needs to hear. That is when I feel it's more aligned with me and not with the things that I feel like are more like a routine.
Yes, exactly. I'm so glad you bring this up, Augustina, because obviously when you talk about exchanging ideas, podcast communication, my mind goes to your Gemini moon, right?
Yes, of course.
And of course, and something that we often forget about in this conversation of purpose versus career is fulfillment. Feeling happy and satisfied. And you have examples of so many people in the world who have had an incredibly successful career, but they are in despair. They're not happy people. They're not fulfilled. And also, people who feel like they're doing their purpose and yet maybe they burn out. Or maybe they start to feel like, when you do what you love for your work, you lose the love for what you do. That kind of thing. And sometimes what I see being the issue there is that it's someone who's not tending to their moon too. I always say, and you probably have a similar saying, I say that your moon is kind of like your heart. I say it's your emotional needs and your emotional nature. If you're not taking care of your emotional needs, nothing's going to work.
You're going to be sad. You're going to be anguished. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be like, this is not right. This does not feel homey. This is no. So yes, I totally agree with you that part of this path and part of our journey, it's to tender that moon and to tender our needs beyond the purpose.
Yes.
Going deeper in the techniques, I would like you to start, but usually in astrology right now, it's like this common sense, like, okay, if you want to look at your career, you have to look at your MC. You have to look at your 10th house, and that's it. It's like, there's so many little things, and right now I feel that my MC in this chat, it's like totally out of the question. When I develop my career, my MC, it's totally out of the question. So
interesting. Yeah.
Going like directly to that, like, okay, you take your MC and you're going to have your profession. It's not like that sometimes.
No, totally. This is a great question. And as I said before, my Gemini rising also wants to hear your take afterwards. So I often separate career and purpose in my mind when looking at a chart. And then the third step is kind of seeing if they are intertwined. So for career, I do tend to look at the 10th house first, but the 10th house being more of ultimate career ambitions and your title. It is kind of the ultimate umbrella of what you do. And then the 6th house is kind of the day in, day out work. I see you nodding. You might feel the same way.
Yes.
And then the second house is how you actually make money. And the second house is also, as I'm sure you use in your practice, so much more than money. It's also your skills, your values, your talents, your priorities. And so it's part of what you're actually pouring into your work, what you have to offer.
Your
So I kind of
resources,
look
it's like the box
at
tool. So you open the box and you take out your tools, and those tools are the ones that you're going to use to make money. So then comes the
yes.
money. But yes, those tools are part of your resources, are part of who you are, and are part of your value.
Exactly, exactly. And for each of those three houses, not only am I looking at the sign itself, of course, I'm also looking at the planets within that house. And then I'm looking at all of the rulers for that house. I am looking at the domicile lord, the planet that rules that house. I'm looking at the exaltation lord, the planet that exalts and uplifts and supports that house. Sometimes I'm looking at the triplicity rulers to offer some more support. So it is layers upon layers upon layers. It's not like, oh, I have an Aries 10th house, I'm an athlete. Period.
No.
It is so not it. So that's kind of the career piece for me. I'm curious how you see career in the chart.
I have a funny story.
Okay, go for it.
When I was born, my mother asked my aunt to make a birth chart for me.
Okay.
So she had it on tape. I really don't know what it is. It got lost, so I don't know what it is. I couldn't ever listen to it, but I know for sure that it existed at some point. And my mom was so pleased and was so relieved because in that reading, she was told that I was going to be an accountant and I was going to be something regarding physics or maths or money or counting money or something like that. I have a Capricorn midheaven.
Okay.
All right? Okay, bear with me. So later on, when I was finishing high school and my mom started to wonder, what is it you're going to study? You're going to go to college. What is it you're interested about? And I said, I would like to study to be the person that goes on the radio, the person that goes in front of the mic. I don't know the translation in English. I don't remember.
Radio host?
Yes.
Radio host?
Yes, a radio host. We here in Argentina, it's called locutor.
Okay.
So my mom was like, "Oh, really? So let's try something else." So my first year at university, I started to study to be a English translator. That was my first year. Half that year, I said, this is not for me. So I changed and I went to study to be a radio producer. My entire family was like, you're going to die without a penny in your pocket. That is not a career. So my mom then told me, I thought that you were going to be an accountant. I thought that you were going to be a lawyer. I thought that you were going to be a physicist because this chart. And I was like, but that has nothing to do with me. I don't like it. I don't like numbers. I don't have an ounce of earth in my birth charts. Like all my planets are in water, air or fire signs. I don't have any planets in earth signs. Like, no, I don't like material things. I like ethereal things. So when I went through my first year, I was like, this is my home. And then I discovered I have my moon in Gemini. So my home, being in a studio, being in the radio, chatting with the people inside and everything was like, I'm home. Why does it feel that this is home for me? And then I discovered, okay, we feel at home and we feel familiar in certain places because it has to do with the moment that we start nurturing our moon.
Yes. Oh, so beautifully said. And it's really interesting that, it sounds like that was your the natural place that you gravitated towards, of course, with it being your moon, what you naturally ache and yearn and hunger for. And funny enough, bringing up being a translator that first semester, I had kind of a similar situation with my moon in the ninth house, my Aquarius moon in the ninth house. Of course, foreign languages, all of that. And it's that when I was 10 years old, I was taking Hebrew classes to prepare for my bat mitzvah when I was 12 or 13.
Okay.
And after the first few sessions that I had with the rabbi who was teaching me Hebrew, and this was my first second language, I suppose, obviously native English speaker, and then I was learning Hebrew, she pulled my mom to the side after class and she said, Devon has a natural affinity for foreign languages. I think she's going to be some sort of interpreter or translator one day. And I was 9 or 10 years old. And what is so funny, Augustina, is that I'm a translator. I'm an interpreter. And my moon in the ninth house, literally, that's what astrology is. We have studied these weird hieroglyphics, these symbols, these patterns. We collect data and we interpret what it means. And so
Yes.
my moon in the ninth house, already at age 9 or 10, it knew what it loved. I mean, it filled me up to learn another language. I was fascinated. And so it's actually really beautiful sometimes when you sit down with a client, and I'm sure you've had similar scenarios where someone feels really, really lost in their career with their purpose. And before we even touch the chart, sometimes I'll just look at them and say, what did you love doing as a kid? Or what were you really good at doing as a kid? What are the things that people naturally come to you for? On what topics do they ask your advice? Those things are not to be ignored because those things are probably part of your heart, your soul, your moon in some way. And so, of course, I'm not surprised that you now have your podcast again. I mean, that Gemini moon is just so good at the exchange of ideas and communication. So it's really beautiful to just hear that.
Cherry on top, I
Yes.
was 3 years working in a media, a TV and radio here where I live for 3 years in a row doing journalism and politics. But it was like, this is not for me. I don't like it. So I have like a career crisis and said, okay, well, it is not for me. This is not myself. I don't like journalism. I don't like politics. I don't like crime. I don't like anything about this. So I moved on. And then
Okay.
later on, when came astrology into my life, I discovered my Mercury is in Pisces. And then I say, okay, so probably it's a radio producer. That place is my home, but not to talk about politics or talk about crime or talk about news or talk about anything like that, but to talk about other languages, talk about in another language, talk about symbolism, talk about magic, talk about astrology.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm curious, before we even get to the purpose part, we're talking about more career right now, the 10th, the 2nd,
Yes.
the 6th, the rulers. I'm curious, in your own chart, how do you see astrology being part of that? And same thing with kind of the radio, the podcast. How do you see those showing up in those houses, the career story in your chart?
I believe that my career story, it's not related to my MC, but
Yes, I agree. Yes.
but it
Yes.
wasn't it was until that moment that I realized that I needed to be disciplined, that I needed to be consistent, that I needed to have a bigger purpose, that I needed to have something to rely on and be responsible and mature and constant about something to achieve it, that I realized, okay, so my Capricorn MC is that. I need to be persistent. I need to be disciplined. I need to be focused, and I need to structure my life to go to that place and to go for it. And then to navigate it through my moon, through my message, through that Mercury that it's in Pisces. It's like every language that I learned, English, astrology. I'm also a rune caster, so I understand Futark.
Wow.
Every language that I incorporate in my life, it's been so easy. So it was like, okay, so that is my purpose. That is my profession. So mixing things. And about mixing, this is an
Yes.
interesting thing because here we have a word that it's called multifacético. I don't know if you heard it
Okay.
in English, but
Multifaceted.
yes,
Yes.
in Spanish, multifacético, that in English would be something like multi-faced.
Multifaceted. It's a word in
Yes.
English as well. Yes.
It goes not to that Gemini place of having too many faces, but it goes to that Gemini place of having too many interests and trying
Yes.
to mix them.
Absolutely. It's so funny you bring this up, Augustina, because I know that you had mentioned something about this when you and I were going back and forth before the show. And it actually made me think of this story involving my husband, who is a Gemini sun, Virgo moon, Leo rising. So Leo
Wow.
rising, of course, meaning chart ruler is that Gemini sun. He's got Venus in Gemini, Virgo moon. He's very, very mutable. And years ago, my husband was going through one of his many lost periods where he was trying to figure out what to do and who am I and what am I here for and all of that. The irony, of course, having the astrologer wife, but sometimes when you're that close, you just can't help. And he was talking to my mom about it. He was like, well, recently I've kind of gotten into this hobby and I have this interest. And she just said, honey, not every new interest has to become your career or your identity. And she didn't mean it in a negative way. She just meant it as, I've noticed this pattern of yours, and it blew his mind, Augustina. Of course, Gemini sun being your identity, your self-concept, it is so fluid for him. The second he talks to someone new, he has a new idea sparked. Oh, there's an exchange of information. It taught him this new interest, and it literally changes his sense of self. And so I have noticed, especially with people that are very mutable, I have so many very mutable clients. And sometimes when I actually tell them that, alongside with the permission that they are also allowed to do multiple things and they're allowed to change their mind, they're allowed to pivot, you're allowed to shift, the relief on their faces is amazing. Because I completely agree with, the multifacético, that you're allowed to be multifaceted. It's
Yes.
part of how you're made.
Yes. And here we have like this collective social thing that we have to get out of high school, go to college, learn something, and then get a good job and stay there for the rest of your life. And we were not allowed in the process to change. We were not allowed in the process to feel the failure of, okay, I made a mistake, this is not my career, or this is not my profession, or I don't like this. So it was like, okay, I choose this, I have my good job, I'm going to stay here and not move. And there was a big wave of crisis, like, I don't understand why I want to change, or I don't understand why I feel that I don't resonate anymore with my life purpose or my career or my profession. And helping people to understand in this Gemini concept or in this mutable concept, you are allowed to change. You are allowed to switch desires or to switch interests across
Absolutely.
the path. And also, it's very clear to me that sometimes with the process of the transits and the process of our solar returns and our perfections and CR and everything, our life changes. So why don't we have the possibility to make a change?
Yes. Yes, it is so, so well said. And, you know, I also have to say that with certain shifts that we have astrologically, like progressions has been a big one for me. It's really fascinating to look back at times long before I knew astrology and I knew about progressions. I'm sure you've done this too, where
Yes.
you can map that onto your life and see, oh my goodness, as my progressed moon changed signs and I started desiring and needing different things, it's like my tune changed overnight. And that actually happened to a close friend of mine. I was on the phone with her maybe a year ago, and she's always been someone who is very free spirited. She's an artist and a poet, and she usually works a few part time jobs, and she's just very creative. And she had always enjoyed that kind of free spirited life. And she called me one day and she said, Devon, I don't know what's going on, but suddenly I'm craving stability and security and a paycheck. And I said, wait 1 second. And I pulled up her chart and I pulled up her progressions. And I kid you not, Augustina, just then her progressed moon had shifted from Sagittarius to Capricorn. Capricorn, 8th house. And suddenly she was wanting something a little bit more stable. And so I explained to her, there's nothing wrong with you, honey. You know, you're going through this phase. And I think allowing ourselves to change as the transits and the progressions and the perfections, I mean, they're all happening for a reason to show us how fluid life is meant to be, you know?
Yes.
So I think that's really important. And I know I'd mentioned to you previously that I also work with a lot of young people, late teenagers and
Yes.
early 20-somethings. And it's one of my favorite age groups to work with because that's the time in life when everyone feels lost. And you're starting to ask the questions, why am I here? Who am I? What am I meant to do? And you can't find the answers anywhere. And so what I have found to be so helpful in those sessions, truly, and this is what we adults need too, is just a reminder of who you are and what you're good at. And of course, you can break down all the career themes and the money, but sometimes just remembering, oh, I'm allowed to be me. And if that means that I need to change or pivot, that's okay.
Yes.
So those are some really powerful sessions because it just feels like you're giving them permission to just be themselves, and they'll figure it out as they go.
And I was once reading the Eric Sullivan's book, the Saturn Transits. And there was this little space that when we get out of high school, that moment we are before our 21 years old,
Yes.
before our Saturn return, way before our Saturn return. So when we are 21, this is a place where our conscious and our youth and adulthood, it's not yet built up. So giving ourselves the permission to change what we want during that process, it's also important.
Yeah.
But socially, it's like, okay, you go outside high school, you go to college, you choose a career, and that's it. And probably it's not going to feel right until you get your Saturn return.
Yeah, absolutely.
And giving them the permission to, okay, so it's okay if you want to choose, it's okay if you want to change, it's okay if you want to experience, it's okay if you want to try some new things and then change your mind. Because that happened to me before my Saturn return.
Meaning you changed jobs a lot?
Before my Saturn return, I realized this story that I'm telling you, that I was on the media, I was on the TV, I was on the radio, and suddenly a career crisis, like, I don't want to do this. even though I love it, I don't want to do this. It was right before my Saturn return. And then
Wow.
when I got the first square before after the Saturn return, it was like,
Yes.
okay, now I'm ready to go back in, but with a different story. That was when astrology came in. So
Absolutely.
counting those spaces, those Saturn paths, cycles between 7 years, when it does the conjunction and then does the squares and then does the opposition, those spots give us the tools of maturity and gives us the tools to make accountable of ourselves and build. So probably at 21, when you are a fresh at anything, a rookie, a starter, you're not going to have the full knowledge of what you want to do with your life.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's so funny. I completely agree with you, even the ages that you're mentioning. But you also have so many people, older adults, who also come to you for readings and say, I'm so lost, or I had this 30-year career, or I was a stay-at-home parent and now I'm an empty nester. We go through these crises over and over again. And the reason why is because the planets go through cycles, and so do we. And so it's interesting, even thinking about a Saturn return, that on one hand, a Saturn return is this coming of age moment and this moment of responsibility and maturity. But at the same time, it is the new moon for Saturn. That.
And also,
Yes,
it's the progressed moon.
I was going to say the same. Yes. Exactly. And that, Augustina, is when I felt like I really found my purpose. It was actually, I had a similar situation as the friend that I was just mentioning who had the progressed moon in Capricorn. Long story short, when I had graduated from college, my progressed moon was in Sagittarius. And so freedom was the name of the game for me. And that is very much aligned with my chart as well. And so I worked multiple part-time jobs. I've always been in service, but I was in the health and wellness world. I've been a yoga teacher since I was 19 years old. I was a breathwork facilitator and meditation teacher. I was a board certified health and wellness coach, working one-on-one with clients. So I was doing all these different things at once. And when my progressed moon hit Capricorn, which is the sign right before my natal Aquarius moon, which we'll get to, I had the same thing as my friend, where I woke up one day, and this was before I knew about progressions. And I woke up one day and I said, oh my gosh, this freedom is kind of suffocating me. It's too unstable. And so I ended up getting a corporate job, which I had sworn I would never do. Aquarius moon conjunct Jupiter in my natal chart. I am like anti-tradition, doing it my own way. And I got a corporate job, and it was really hard for me. And I think part of it is also that as you track that progressed moon, there are certain signs or houses where it's a little out of alignment with your natal promise. And that was for me. But what's hilarious is that in this corporate job, I was reading tarot cards for people. On Halloween each year, I would give astrology readings to teams. I would help them with team building exercises and learn how to work together. They would have me wear a witch's hat because I was like the team witch, which is hilarious. And it wasn't until, I know, it's so funny. It wasn't until my progressed moon hit my natal Aquarius, 9th house, that I was on the floor in my apartment one day. I remember this like it was yesterday. And I was feeling so drained from my job. And I started talking to my husband saying, I don't know what my path is. I feel so lost. I thought that I wanted stability, but I absolutely hate the corporate world. At least, it's just not for me and who I am. And randomly, I don't know why I had this idea, Augustina, but thank God I did. I ran into my little library and I grabbed this astrology book that I had gotten in college years before. And I come outside and I open the astrology book up to my moon sign. And I start reading about Aquarius moon and 9th house. And I start sobbing. because I felt like being reminded, especially of the ninth house piece, which the irony is that my progressed moon had just come back to Aquarius in the ninth house. And I literally remembered who I was. I was like, wow, ninth house, I'm actually a spiritual guide and teacher. What am I doing? And so that was the beginning of my like real professional astrology journey. So I share that just to say, like you, I think we're allowed to shift. We're actually supposed to shift. And kind of to sum that up, the visual that I've always had when it comes to finding your career and your purpose and your path, I almost feel like we're sculptors that are chipping away at something. And every time we chip away, the image gets a little clearer, but you're not going to get the image unless you keep chipping away. You have to try.
Yes.
So if you and I both hadn't had a million jobs, we wouldn't have found this.
No. And also, when we try to focus on profession or career, we cannot set aside the moon, the sun, the ascendant.
Yes.
You have like a lot of tools. You have a lot of
Yes.
jobs. You have a lot of professions. So that it's part of who you are.
Yeah, so well said. I agree. And I'm glad we brought up the moon so early on, but I also see those other planets being so important. Like I say that your Venus is your value system. You know, it's more than relationships. It's really what you're attracted to, what you find pleasurable and beautiful. If you're not living in alignment with your values, you're going to feel so off. Or your rising sign. I feel like everything you do in life, you kind of filter through the lens of your rising sign.
Yes.
And so all of those pieces are so important. I'm really glad you brought that up. Now, I'm curious when it comes to purpose, because we haven't touched on purpose yet. Unless you don't want to shift.
No. It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, you know, we've talked a lot about these career pieces and having to chip away and all the shifts. I also really want to talk about purpose and kind of how we both see that in a chart. But if you did have anything else you wanted to share first, please feel free. My mind is going in a million directions at
Yes,
once.
mine too. Regarding purpose, I feel that sometimes purpose in a birth chart is shown. Well, I look at Jupiter, first of all, because
Beautiful.
I feel that Jupiter has that like upper knowledge. It's like that God or that deity or that philosophy that you have inside. So I first look at Jupiter and try to see what the person feels connected to regarding spirituality. And then I look at the ninth house.
Oh, so interesting. I love hearing this. Okay.
Because
Do say more.
Yes, I feel like the ninth house is that place where, well, it's the joy of the sun. So it's the joy of the sun because it takes like a whole year to go to that place again. So the ninth house for me, it's not only publications or spirituality or upper knowledge, but also it's that place when we connect with God and we connect with the upper self. So sometimes purpose, it's kind of being faithful or having faith in that everything it's meant to be for a reason. And I've heard Patrick Watson said on Helena Wood's podcast the other day. So we have fate. So life is written, but somehow we have to go through this experience to understand why we are here. So in that sentence, it was for me that place of, wow, so we have to have faith, and faith, it's in the ninth house.
Absolutely. That is such a beautiful way of seeing that. I do think of the ninth house sometimes as kind of the place of self-discovery,
Yes.
where we leave what is comfortable and known and we find what we actually believe out in the world. So I can completely see how that's tied to purpose. I also look at two different points. I didn't bring up the midheaven with career because I see midheaven as a little bit more purposeful. I say your midheaven is your legacy. Ultimately one day when you pass away, I think this is part of how you'll be remembered. So for you even
Yes.
having that Capricorn midheaven, people will remember you as some sort of authority figure. She really was an expert in astrology, Capricorn being ruled by Saturn, which is the planet that rules the occult and magic in some ways that you
Yes.
really, people don't often think about that side of Saturn, talking about topics that are also exiled and on the fringes of society, if you will. Very Saturnian. And then also the way that you do your work, as you said, is very disciplined and organized and responsible. So all those pieces I see as kind of the type or the tip of the iceberg. It's, you're the ultimate summit of the mountain, the legacy, which you're not always keeping that in mind in the day to day, but I like to have it kind of as like the carrot at the end of the
Yes.
trail, if you will.
Yes.
So that's really beautiful. And the second point that I'll just bring up, and I'll also say with the midheaven, as I said before, I always look to the ruling planets, et cetera, et cetera. But the other point that I look at is also the lot of spirit. So one of the Arabic parts, and that is the lot of the sun. So it's interesting that you bring up the ninth house being the joy of the sun, that the lot of spirit, in Hellenistic astrology, they believed that the lot of spirit was said to be your daimon, which is like your guiding angel, your guiding spirit. Yes. And so the way that they thought about this, which I'll just mention briefly because it's a very cool concept, is that they believed before you were born, the three fates would weave possible life patterns for you.
Yes.
And then you would actually get to choose which one you were going to incarnate into. And once you chose your fate pattern, they would assign you a daimon, a guiding spirit that would go with you in that lifetime to ensure that you do what you signed up to do. So that to me is very much part of purpose because it's truly what you're here for. So I bring that into, but I love that you brought up Jupiter in the ninth house. I think there are a million ways to look at purpose in the chart, and that alone tells us so much about purpose. It's no one thing.
This is why the thing is that profession, it's not only one part of the piece of our birth chart. It's like you see this analogy that some astrologers have, like the birth chart is like a pizza and the 12 houses is like the 12 spots, and you have to look for them to identify the different areas of your life. Yes. But how do you explain that, for example, you have a Pisces 10th house, but you have like a lot of jobs, a lot of professions?
Yes.
I have a Capricorn 10th house, but I like astrology and I like symbolic languages and I like the radio and I like, so the 10th house for me is usually that place in which we try to figure out how to structure what we came here to do. And the ascendant, it's also that place of ourself that holds that what we are here to do. And the ninth house, that it's entwined with the ascendant, it's that place where we have faith and we trust that we are following the right path to do what we want to do and to do what we came here to do.
Absolutely. So beautifully said. And I'll also mention, when we talk about midheaven, and I know you have your Capricorn midheaven in your 10th house, right? Your Capricorn 10th house. And I'll just mention that, of course, the midheaven, depending on what house system you're using, and I know I use whole sign houses.
I use whole sign. Yes, I use whole signs.
And of course, the midheaven can float between the different houses.
Yes.
And I have found that the house that it lands in, you also want to kind of import those significations into that life.
Totally.
Because For example, I don't have my midheaven in the 10th house. It's in the 9th house. And so again, those 9th house themes are even stronger for me. And so when someone has, just to kind of make it a quick synopsis, when someone has midheaven in the 9th house, sometimes they're actually known for their beliefs or their teachings or what they preach about in life. When it's in the 10th, sometimes it is more about what they created, what they accomplished, what they did. When it's in the 11th, I've seen that play out sometimes more as who they were connected to and the communities and organizations that their name was part of. And so where your midheaven is, of course, not always in the 10th, that is also really important to look at. What does it mean to be in a different house? So that's also why I really don't always see that as career. It's more of part of why I'm here. It's the mountain I'm climbing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'm glad you agree.
Totally. Yes, totally. Totally. But I love this about astrology, that we cannot narrow everything to one single spot. And we cannot look at a birth chart for career, for profession, for relationships, for travel, for anything. We cannot look at the birth chart in separate ways, like in separate pieces. We have to look at the whole thing altogether.
Absolutely. And that is something I really struggle with on social media, to be honest. When I post a video and someone says, oh, I have Venus and Capricorn in the 6th house, tell me what that means. And first of all, you don't always have time to give personal interpretations, nor should you be giving personal interpretations on social media every day. But something that is really tricky is when you get into more nuanced, accurate astrology, you cannot give an accurate interpretation of one piece of the pie without seeing the rest of the pie. And I'll just kind of mention as an example, as part of this conversation, when we talk about planets in a house, let's say planets in the 10th house, not only do you look at what each of those planets represents and what that means to be in the 10th house, but it also means that the other houses that are ruled by those planets, well, those house themes get pulled into your career as well.
Yep.
And so that's why when someone says Venus and Capricorn the 6th, I'm like, well, I want to look at your Libra house, your Taurus house. I mean, there's a lot to look at here.
Yes, there is a lot to look, and there is a lot to see, and there is a lot to put into consideration when we try to help others.
Yes, exactly. And of course, when you're an astrologer with your heart in the right place, and luckily many of us are in that spot, we want to genuinely help someone and give them something that will support them and feel resonant for them. So we don't want to shortchange them by saying, oh, Venus and Capricorn in the 6th, it means this one thing. And they're like, oh, okay. I want it to be a dialogue, a conversation, because I can tell you what I see in the chart, but I also need to hear from you. You're the one who has lived this chart. How does that manifest? Let's create this two-way street. Of course, this is my Gemini rising talking right now.
But also that place that when someone comes to us to ask for this information, and at first I usually see that, okay, you tell me what you see. Yes, I can tell you a lot of things that I see, but I need to know if you resonate. I need to know your story, because probably I'm going to tell you one thing, and then you said, no, this is not for me, or this is, I don't feel this. We have a bunch of interpretations. We have a wide way to look at astrology, and not in a narrow way.
Exactly. And, let's say someone's having some sort of 5th house transit, and maybe your mind first goes to children because there's something happening with their moon too. But unless you talk to them and find out, oh, they don't want children. Maybe they even had a surgery to prevent that. Oh, well, then we have to talk about an entirely different side of the 5th house.
Yes.
And so it's really, it's not that we are trying to play a trick on you of like, you tell me the answers first. It is that we also need the context. It makes the reading so much more accurate, because if I'm seeing fifth house, but you're actually in your 80s, maybe it's becoming a grandparent for the fifth time and not becoming a parent for the first time.
Yes,
So these are important nuances.
totally. Let's see. You said off camera that you had an example. So let's see.
I do. Shall I try sharing it?
Yes.
Okay,
Let's see.
perfect. So while I am sharing, I will just tell the people we are about to look at Michael Jackson's birth chart, and we're going to break down some of these pieces for you all. Okay. Can you see the chart here?
Yes.
Okay. Amazing.
Wonderful.
Okay, let me make this larger just so that I can see everything. Okay. So one thing that really strikes me as interesting, and of course, I want to hear your thoughts if you have any along the way, but when we start with his 10th house of career, let's just go there. It's Sagittarius.
Yes.
Now, someone might see that and say, well, teaching or philosophy or religion or spirituality or foreign travel. Well, what's really interesting about the Sagittarius 10th house is that if you actually know and listen to Michael Jackson's music, first of all, he was a global phenomenon,
Yes.
but also his whole message, what he preached, which is a very Sagittarian word, is global unity.
Yes.
He had songs like Man in the Mirror, Black or White. He always was talking about making the world a better place and coming together. He was against racism. He was one of, I think, the first Black people to be on MTV because he fought for it. And so there was really this message he shared with the world of global unity. And that feels very Sagittarius to me. So that piece is beautiful. And let me know if you want to add something else.
I was just looking at his Jupiter in the 8th in Libra and the lot of collabs that he did along his journey.
Exactly.
There was a lot of people that sang with him, from Paul McCartney to Britney Spears. Like,
yes.
A lot of people that were with him.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up, because this Jupiter, of course, is so important in his chart. Not only is his chart ruler because he's a Pisces rising and it's conjunct his North Node, but the Jupiter also rules that 10th house of career.
House. Yes.
Yes. I'm glad you brought in the collaborations, because something that I had, of course, talked about just even in my notes preparing for this is I talked about how he was literally financially entangled with his father, with his brothers, with managers, with record labels. And in so many interviews, he talked about how he felt like he was never really solo. He could not live his own life. He was always intertwined with others. So there was the positive side of it, what you said, some of those amazing collaborations like Paul McCartney, Britney Spears. But there was also that, North Node on Jupiter, a lot of intertwined relationally in Libra. And I'll also just quickly say, with this Jupiter in Libra being part of this 10th house career story, is that Jupiter in Libra, I think of that as being very social justice warrior.
Yes.
And what I was just saying, Man in the Mirror. And this morning when I was thinking about having this conversation with you, of course, I was listening to some of his music. And in one of his songs, he's talking about all of the wars around the world and gang fights and all of that. And there was a line where he said, it's a turf war on a global scale, but I want to hear both sides of the tale. That is so Libra.
Yes, that is so Libra. Yes.
Both sides.
Yes.
He said that and I paused the video and I was like, no way.
I believe that we can track anyone's astrology through the phrases they say.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, we could talk about this for hours, but I was going to come down for a second to the second house of money, which is really interesting because, of course, Michael Jackson had a lot of money, but he does have an Aries second house, and he was a very impulsive, big spender.
Yes.
Aries can spend fast.
Yes.
And
Aries
with the South Node here.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like it just slipped through his fingers. He can't hold on.
No, but at the same time, Mars is in Taurus.
Exactly.
It was big expenses, but it was luxury expenses.
Yes. Yes. Such a good point. And you know what's also crazy, Agustina? This hit me this morning that Mars being in Taurus, so part of how how he made his money, okay, Mars in Taurus, third house. First of all, third house can be writing, communication. He was also a songwriter. He literally communicated through his songs. Third house also being that short form communication.
Yes.
And it's not, he was writing movies. He was writing 3-minute songs. But Mars in Taurus, first of all, the Mars piece, he was known for his physicality. I mean, he was a dancer. Mars in a Venus-ruled sign. He was beautiful with his dancing. And hey, Taurus rules the throat. He was a singer.
Yes. And at the same time, that third house, it's siblings. So
yes,
he was first known with the Jackson 5.
Yes, exactly.
His first money, his first was the Jackson 5. So here we can see, I understand. Today I was watching one of Kira's reels, and she said that usually when we bring up famous people birth charts, it's like, okay, but I'm not able to relate, but because I don't know this person deeply enough to see how they lived their own birth chart. So it was very nice for her to take up examples of regular people to understand birth charts. But when we take a look at the chart of a person that it's as well known as Michael Jackson, and we can track his story through this birth chart, it kind of works.
I said that earlier. It's almost like astrology works. Almost.
Yes, it's almost like it works.
Exactly. And I'm actually glad you brought up that piece about not being able to know some of these celebrities. With someone like Michael Jackson, granted, you'll never know everything, but we know a lot through some of those interviews. And something I find interesting in his chart is with Saturn being in the 10th house, a few things to say about that. First of all, his career was a lot of pressure.
Yes.
It was hard freaking work, and he started working when he was a child.
But his public image also was very hard for him. It was also very difficult for him.
Absolutely. And also Saturn being the father. His father put all of the pressure on him in his career. And yet he was also partially known because of what his father did. And so that's interesting, but Saturn also pulling in themes from the Capricorn 11th house and the Aquarius 12th house. Well, the Capricorn, the 11th house being part of the 10th house of career and legacy. First of all, as I said earlier, he was partially known for how large his fan base was. Yes. He is one of the largest global superstars we've ever had. And what I brought up earlier with that Jupiter in Libra being the social justice warrior, he really talked about these philanthropic, humanitarian pursuits, bringing the world together, being a collective, the man in the mirror, look at yourself in the mirror. And then the 12th house themes, he was known for some mental health struggles.
And also he was very a loner.
Very alone, yes.
He built Neverland to be like exiliated, to be outside, not an outsider, but he wanted to be like outside. He wanted to be like, okay, isolated. He wanted to be
isolated.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, that's such a good point. And I've also seen in interviews, he talked about how he loved being on stage, but the second he was off stage, he just felt not seen again. You know, he really
Yes.
was a kind of a sad person, a sad, lonely person. And it was really just that performance that brought light back, which of course brings us over here to this Mercury Venus conjunction in Leo in the sixth house. And when I see Mercury and Venus together, a few things come to mind. I'd love to hear if you have thoughts, but one of the things is this is literally technical creative ability. You know, Mercury, he really learns his craft
Yes.
of singing, dancing. He practiced so hard in the sixth house. It's a grind. So
Yes.
those themes come in for sure. And also wanting to communicate something beautiful that brings people together, that creates a sense of unity. That's the Mercury wanting to communicate, the Venus being the social harmony, the union. And it's all in Leo. I mean, he was a freaking incredible performer. The man could do theatrics.
An artist. It is an
Artist.
artist. He is an artist.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So all those pieces are so important. And I guess last thing I'll say here is the lot of spirit that I mentioned with being
Yes.
a purpose. So his lot of spirit is over here in Virgo in the seventh house. And what's interesting about his purpose being in Virgo, especially the second decan, because this is 18 degrees, the decans being, you know, the three subsections of the
Yes.
zodiac, is that the second decan is co-ruled by Saturn and Venus. And it's all about the pain of creating something beautiful and perfect. And he was known for being, I mean, a grueling perfectionist. Even in
Yes.
the movie that recently came out about a month ago, there's a scene where he gets off stage and everyone says, Michael, that was amazing. And the only thing he says was, oh, I should have stayed on my toes longer. That he was already thinking back on what I did wrong. And so he has this desire to really perfect something beautiful. And it's in the seventh house of one-on-one relationships, of partnership, of connection. So first of all, it kind of brings back some of the collaboration we talked about.
Yes.
But I also think in him being this lonely soul, he really wanted to be seen. It was about his audience, the people seeing him. To him,
Yes.
it was this conversation with him. And with them. So that's that part. And of course, that lot of spirit purpose is being ruled
By
by that
Mercury.
Mercury Venus conjunction. So he really was here to perfect something beautiful. And the way he did that was in that theatrical, dramatic performer saying something beautiful and saying it in a beautiful way. So
Singing in a beautiful way.
singing in a
Yes.
beautiful way. So, of
Totally.
course, we could talk about this one chart for hours, but I hope people get kind of a brief teaser of just how deep this goes. It's no one piece that you have to look at.
No, career and life purpose and path and what we came here to do, and everything has interconnections inside our birth chart. We cannot look just one
Yes.
piece alone and isolate it. We have to look at the whole chart, and we have to know your story and your context for us as
Exactly.
well to add the layers and the nuances and everything for you to understand your whole being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said earlier, I really do have that visual of chipping away at the statue that even
Yes.
when we astrologers sit down with a client, I feel like we are part of that chipping away process where we're saying, ooh, I see this. And oh, how does that resonate for you? And through that back and forth dialogue, you start to create this image where you're like, oh, that's it. And so it really is this magical system. I do think astrology is both a science and an art. And I don't think you can do it without playing both sides.
Totally agree. Yes.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yes.
Devon, we can talk for hours.
I know,
We
it's a
should
problem.
yes, it's but We have an expression here in Argentina that it said, el tiempo es tirano, that it's the time is a tyrant.
Mhm.
And
Exactamente.
exactamente. And I wish that you would come back and talk more about this on another episode of Astrología en Criollo. And this was an amazing chat. This was an amazing to talking to you and going deeper into astrology and going deeper into career and going deeper into life purpose.
Exactly. Thank you so much for having me on. This was so much fun. I feel like a Gemini moon and a Gemini rising could yap for hours. So
Totally, girl.
I hope that everyone listening, took something away from this. And I'll just kind of plug here if anyone is interested in diving into career purpose, obviously in their own chart. I know I offer one-on-one readings. I believe you do as well.
Yes.
You can find my services just at devonrochelle.com. I'm on Instagram at it's Devon Rochelle. And I'm sure you'll see all of the links in the bio. We'll be collaborating on these things. But thank you again for having me. This was just so much fun.
Thank you so much for being my guest today, Devon. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening to Astrología en Criollo. I'm going to leave every link, every collaboration down below so you can find Devon and you can find me. And hoping for a next episode with you and hoping for us to share another time chatting and yapping about astrology. And thank you so much everyone else to hear out this episode of Astrología en Criollo. Have a really good day. Bye-bye. Esto fue Astrología en Criollo. Porque acá en Argentina, cuando decimos en criollo, significa para que lo entiendan todos. Mi nombre es Agustina Sampietro. No te olvides de suscribirte a este podcast para no perderte de ningún episodio y seguirme en las redes sociales que estoy como Agus Astrología. Ahí también en el link de mi perfil vas a encontrar el contacto para poder agendar tu lectura de carta natal, de revolución solar y también tener tu acompañamiento emocional astrológico personalizado. Te espero en el próximo episodio de Astrología en Criollo. Bye bye.